that came out of that summer. So maybe
That's really good. Yeah.
I think it goes deeper than that, though, because it's like if I hadn't been the needy person I was, which I'm
That's
a
true.
very independent, and I mean that very specifically because I am not that. If you know me, like I'm a very independent person, but when you are broken and you are in a place of that identity crisis and you are looking to everything else, you insert what it is, besides God, like you are going to have actions that speak to that. And my action was like be my everything in every way possible. I could say that. And I came from a broken family, so there was also a lot of fear and doubt that like was being spoken to me by the devil, because that's what he does, right?
Yep.
He puts that in your mind, and you're like, our marriage isn't going to last. It's you know, you aren't good enough. You have all those lies, and if you're not coming to the Creator, if you're not coming to God where there's truth,
That's good.
that is when this problem starts to happen. It festers, and it's like Pete did his actions. His actions perpetuated the issue, but the issue was not just him. The issue was my ownness of I need him to be my everything, but God is where that is. And if you can direct your focus there on God, and he can direct his focus on God, and we can walk in agreement in that, and we can walk closer to God, we will automatically get closer. And it's not like troubles won't happen, because that doesn't happen. But because we're imperfect people.
Yeah.
But you have to have the right direction. And so if you find yourself clinging to other things and trying to cling to your purpose outside of who you are in God, like that's the problem.
Wow.
Have to fix that.
You sort of described yesterday about the triangle.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Like so, again, the pastor family that we were with, they always had this like, if you know them, you know exactly who I'm talking about. If you know them, but it's God's here, right? And so like you're on a path towards God, and like He's on a path. I should have done the triangle over here. Sorry.
I like it. See this?
We worked
Teamwork.
on that, yeah. So, you're getting closer to God. And if you're getting closer to God and he's getting closer to God, watch this. As you walk along your path, you get closer to each other. And it's so simplistic, but so true. And when you start walking away from God, what happens?
Yep. Further apart.
It is a good teacher moment. I used to be a teacher. Thank you, all your teachers. Thank you.
That's
yeah,
good.
I had that same example or analogy, whatever you want to call it, that when I was at a young age, and she mentioned it yesterday, and it was reminded. But I didn't come from a broken home, and we were raised in church, and I had a lot of shame. When I had to go through this. I was like one of the first in our family that, failed marriage. And I had to go back to the roots of, what my parents had, and dive into the Word. And God wasn't ashamed of me. He still loved me through all this. But I had to pick up some pieces, and, I always had this shadow over bringing shame to my family. And I had 3 kids I had to, stand up for and give them some hope too. So it was a lot of shame that I had to get over and give to God and let Him love me through it. And I give Him all the glory for it.
So walking through that, in y'all's story, it's easy to, again, she took this from me, right? That was, as you said, and we all paint a picture, we all paint a narrative. Sometimes it's true, often it's not. It's our version of that. In your situation, it's easy to paint that towards Mr. Tommy because of the extreme of what had that hold on your life with drugs and alcohol in that season, right? What did that do for you? What did that make you realize even about yourself and your journey as the one who was right? You know what I mean?
Well, I worked in the public too. I was like a public servant at sheriff's office, and school system. We were always dealing with people. And I'm not perfect. I realize I'm not perfect, and I have just as many problems as, the next person. But I just had to pray for him that, God would convict him. He was just my rock that I had to cling to. I knew I couldn't control Tommy. I mean, I couldn't make him do what I wanted him to do, make him be the husband I wanted him to be, and the dad, I didn't have any control of that. It was all in God's hands.
Had to keep walking. Yeah. Mr. Tommy, what about you? What's that? You kind of spoke a little about this earlier, but I'll let you kind of unpack it some more. What was that lesson learned, your rock bottom moments that you walk through?
There were so many over 25 years. But the lesson I learned was I can't do it myself. I can't rely on me. I can't rely on my friends. I can't rely on Diane. I can lean on her, but I have to rely on God. And it's shameful that you have to wait 55 years to realize that. But yeah, I had to rely on God to walk by me. And as Sierra and Pete did the triangle, it works. The closer you get to God, the closer you get to your spouse. I mean, it's proven fact. So, but like I said earlier, are there struggles? Every day. No matter what you do, there's going to be a struggle.
It took you 55 years, but God didn't give up, right?
No, he did not give up. I mean, he was right there. I never had a DUI. Never. I've had policemen put me in their car and carry me home, but I never had a DUI. I wrecked cars and should have went to jail, but I didn't. Because he had a purpose for my life.
Wow.
Does that mean if you have one that you're worse than I am? No, it does not. It just means that I was luckier than you. God had a purpose for my life. So he's been there where I couldn't see him. He was always there.
Yeah. You said something earlier. You can't rely on Diane and yourself and your friends. You had to rely on God. When you said that about your friends, you had mentioned something to me this week about being mindful about the friends you were with, basically.
Yes. When I started up a journey, you have to totally change. I moved to Jacksonville. I got out of a halfway house and was in Jacksonville, so I got an apartment and had a job. But you don't go back to the same haunts you used to go.
Yeah.
You can't rely on those friends, especially if they're not Christian friends. And I didn't have very many. I had a bunch of friends, and I didn't have a lot of Christian friends.
Yeah.
The ones I did have did reach out to me, and I know he won't mind me using his name, Johnny Tatum, one of the best men I know. He's the one that told me you can't fix your family till you fix yourself. So he had walked in the shoes that I was walking in at the time.
Yeah.
So you have to change your atmosphere,
Wow,
get back
yeah.
in church. My counselor, and this is not about me, my counselor, federal counselor, invited me to Celebration Church in Jacksonville, and he was another mentor. He saw the potential, and he invited me to church, and I started going to Celebration Church in Jacksonville, and that's right. God put me where I needed to be.
Yeah. And so you were, in that season, isolated, alone, broken, with nothing. So your circumstances were unfortunate, but you put yourself in a culture of people who cared about you, who wanted the best for you. So you were mindful of the people around you, and then that helped you make better choices in life and helped you kind of, right?
Oh, absolutely.
That's good.
And my kids, I could call them. I don't think Brian's in here, but he's here today. He and helped me get my first apartment, used his hand-me-down stuff, so they never gave up on me. They weren't proud of me. He was a police officer. Funny story, I was at the halfway house, and he drives up in his patrol car. And then I walk out to meet him, and just everybody says, I said, yeah, and I'm very proud of him,
Wow.
But you have to put yourself in a position with Christian.
Yeah.
I'm going to hit on something that I think is good for me is my life group. If you don't have a life group, folks, you need to get a life group. And it's just amazing.
Yeah.
You can still have the outside world. Don't get me wrong. You can still do things. There's still things you can do. But it's so much easier when you're walking with God.
Yeah. Well, it's the value of community, like you talked about. I mean, I completely agree. It's so important. What would
I just want to say, we don't want it to sound like we're proud of our story, but just give God the glory. And if it helps somebody else to see that He is the answer, and He will help you and be there, then it's all worth it all.
last thing I'll throw out, and you guys can, whoever, more than one of you can answer if you've got something, but you guys walk through that season of struggle. Both of you or all of you, should I say, both of you as families were in these rock bottom situation, these struggle moments, ready for divorce, walk through it. What do you say to somebody today? What's your word of encouragement for someone who's in it, who's been through it, or maybe they don't think they're going to go through it?
So I had something when you were talking that I just felt like I was supposed to say, so I'm going to say it. I was thinking about the picture of how Jesus came and died and how he was beaten and broken and pierced and just all the suffering he went through. And he saved our world. He saved us through his brokenness, through his body being beaten, torn down. How much more? He did that for us. How much more can your hurts, can your brokenness bring to God? Like that, he did that for us. Just think about that picture and think about how he can use your hurts, the literal scars, emotional pain that you're going through. He can use that for his glory. He wants to use that for his glory. But you have to let him. And you have to. I think it's such in a small community, what you guys have lived through, the shame that you felt is enormous. And we put that on people. We put it on ourselves, but we also put it on others. But God gave you your story for a reason. He gave it to you. He didn't give you the hurts and the things, but he is allowing you, if you choose to bring yourself healing and to bring others healing through the journey you're on.
That's good, and you have to make that choice, that journey for whatever your season of life is, whatever that struggle is, or even if you're not in a struggle, you're in that summer of the soul season. You still have to make those intentional choices that when you hit the winter, you're walking with God through that. That's really good. Any other final words? Any final thoughts? A word of encouragement, or
Just don't ever give up hope. Jesus chose 12 men who were not righteous. They might have thought they were, but they were not righteous. They were all come from different backgrounds. And that's how he does it us. He chooses us, which in turn we have to choose him. He gives everybody a choice. You have a choice to do good or you have a choice to do bad. The choice you make in life should revolve around God. But don't ever give up hope.
That's good. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for your vulnerability, just to be honest and transparent with us and share us what you guys have walked through. And
One more thing.
Yeah.
I told Pete and Sarah when we prayed a while ago, I'm proud of them because early in their marriage, they came to realize they had a problem. And they were both God-fearing people, and they knew what to do, So don't do like we did. We gave up. They never gave up. So, always have that always have that encouragement of don't give up. And I'm just so proud of you two.
Can we real quick practical? I'll let you finish this. I want you to talk about. So one of the things we didn't talk about was what do you wish was like in place in your life that was there that would have maybe have helped you on your journey. And so you guys talk about your Sunday night thing and how helpful that is. So we just share this. This is like I'm always like really practical. Like, all right, what do I do from here? Talk to us just real briefly about that.
Okay. So this is something that we put in place recently, but I mean, I think we didn't learn this early. We learned this 17 years into marriage. So one thing that Sierra and I do, we sat down, we had a conversation. We talked about things, and communication, I think, is a big, like that was one of our big problems. Had we just kind of sat down and had an honest chat and heard each other, we probably could have avoided 2 years in Mars Hill and a rough summer here. But we kind of sat down and she talked about, I'm a list guy. I've said that before. There are some times, or maybe even a lot of times, where my list becomes more important than my time with my wife or my daughter. And so, like, we ask questions like, hey, do you feel like I spent intentional time with you? Do you feel like I communicated well? Do you feel like I showed you I love you, like you need that? And so that's every Sunday after we put Kyrie to bed. And we've even brought her into that conversation. Ask her, is there anything I can do to show you that I love you more next week and things like that. And you know, she's 7, so sometimes it's like, hey, don't make me go to bed at a certain time, you know, stuff like that. Like you get that, and it's like, I can't do that, but don't love you that much, I guess. But
No, you do love her. That's why.
Yeah, I do. I love
yeah,
my kid. Yeah. But
that's why you make her go to bed.
yeah, for sure. That's right. That's right. But yeah, and we have chats. It's everything from going ahead and communicating to, hey, Wednesday night I'm going out with so and so, or Tuesday night's taco night, whatever. Yeah.
I was thinking, like, don't think that we have it all together.
We do
Like,
not. No.
Please understand that.
Yeah.
And we have fights
We
all the time because we're both independent people who know we are right. Like, totally,
Yeah.
100%. And so when we come into the Sunday nights, it is an agreed upon, like, we're going to come in to make things better. Like, we're not going to come in as best as we can with an attitude. So, like, when we've had arguments, I mean, Pete really gets mad.
that is
I
true,
don't. No.
That is
But,
not. That is not.
but we both have tendencies to be emotional, and we come into Sunday night in agreement that we want to work through. So we talk about hard stuff, and we're not going to put all of our stuff out there, but there's hard discussions we have. But it revolves around like our inadequacies as people, and how can we improve to make the marriage better.
And it's helped Sierra a lot get better. So thank you. Yeah, for sure. I recommend it. All husbands, I recommend that. Yes.
Yeah. But have the hard conversations because
for sure. Yes.
it has saved our last 2 years.
So avoiding doesn't help.
Sure, in your own mind, and then the marriage, yeah. But it doesn't. No.
I love that practical tool, that practical step of, hey, let's talk every week, and let's talk about, hey, what do you want to have for dinner for Tuesday so we know what groceries to buy. But also like, hey, this last week, whatever, like it's a set aside time to share my thoughts and my feelings. And it's safe ground, and it's the difficult things. And I think so much of marriage is just not communicating what's going on and what I'm thinking and feeling. And if we can have intentional, strategic ways where we're doing that as a couple, that sounds really nerdy and planned out, but how beneficial and helpful that is at the same time.
For sure. And I mean, I've learned personally, like, if I was in the middle of playing a video game, which I do frequently, and Sierra was like, you know, Sierra came down, she's like, you always ignore us, blah, blah, blah. You know, I would not hear that well, and I would probably say things that I might regret later, I don't know, but being able to sit down on a Sunday night, and she was like, hey, Tuesday and Thursday, you know, Kyrie and I were doing this thing that you could have been a part of, but you sort of were down here. I hear that in more of a calm voice, and I take it in less of a defensive manner, so it's been helpful for me. And I already said it was helpful for me, so I'm just repeating myself now, but I'm sorry,
Yeah.
One of the
I wish we had had that earlier, you know, could have let that pride go and being right.
Yeah,
and,
it takes
I haven't done anything wrong. You have.
Yeah. It takes
I
a
wish
spirit
we'd
of
have
humility,
communicated
right?
better
Oh, yeah.
earlier.
Well, one of the questions you had sent us during the week was, what have you learned about your spouse?
Yeah. Oh, that's right. We didn't get to that.
Yeah. I tell this to Diana all the time, you're always right. You know, whether she is or not, she's always right. And some men, if you will learn to do that, you know, but, you know, you have to tell a little white lie, but she's always right.
And then on Sunday nights, you can say, hey, babe, if I'm be honest, you weren't right.
We do ours every night when we sit down to eat.
That's good.
It's an every night, or me driving home from work from Gainesville. We'll talk sometimes 30 minutes about the day, what we done, what needs to be done. It's an everyday thing now. Where used to, we didn't talk at all. We'd come in 25 years ago. I'd come in, she'd have supper cooked. We'd eat, sit down and eat, and everybody go their own way. You know, so but we do a talk every day.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you guys so much again for your honesty, for your transparency. Can you guys help me thank them? So, you know, we use the story of Ruth and this idea that families struggle because of circumstances, because of the choices they make, because of the culture around them that influences the choices. And we see that in y'all's stories, and we see that in our own story. And again, whatever season of life you're in, single, married, divorced, whatever, we all walk through versions of that. And a couple thoughts that I wanted to share. That really, honestly, I wrote these down last night after we had met yesterday, just to kind of hear a little bit more about it. And the first thing that I want to say is that God's not done with your story. So no matter what seat you find yourself in today, again, single, married, divorced, too early to be married, God is not done with your story. He's still writing your story. You know, the story of Ruth that I mentioned earlier, it's kind of random. It's like, why is this in the Bible? There's not a whole lot to it. Ruth, this cursed Moabite woman from the line of sinful people, right, who this guy made a bad choice, shouldn't have gone to, whatever. Ruth is the great somewhere along the line grandmother of Jesus. And so she was from a lineage of people who were born out of sin, yet God told Ruth, hey, I'm not done with your story. Your line will produce my son. And so if you feel like Mr. Tommy walked around for seasons of feeling shame and guilt, and even you, Miss Diane, and you've walked in that for weeks or months or years, God's not done with your story. If you're still breathing, he ain't done, you know, as they say. And so, man, when you feel hopeless, it's words like from our friends to say, there's hope for something else. And there's so much more to their stories we didn't even get into, but even when things don't go as you wanted, and there isn't that 7-year redemption remarriage story, there is still something else beyond that. We just can't see that right now because we're stuck in our struggle, in our season, our situation. It's hard to see beyond that right now. But when we hear stories of how God is not done with your story, and we hold on to verses like this, Romans 15:13 says, this is Paul writing this, he says, I pray that God, the source of hope, will fill you completely with joy and peace because you trust in him. And then you will overflow with confident hope through the power of the Holy Spirit. And that's what Miss Diane read this verse. I was like, that's perfect for where we're going, is that when we feel hopeless, when we feel there's no peace, when we feel there's no light at the end of the tunnel, it's his Spirit that brings us. It's not us trying, right, Mr. Tommy? It's not us doing it on my efforts or me relying on people, good people or wrong people. It's not me relying on my spouse. It's not me relying on my friends or my parents, whoever. It's me following Jesus, controlling my choices, relying on his Spirit to provide the peace, the confident hope that only that he can provide, the joy that he can provide completely with joy and peace because we trust in him. And so cling on to that truth today, that God is not done with your story. He's not done with your story. He wasn't done with their story, and he's still writing y'all's stories, still writing our stories even today. And the second thing I want to say is to keep moving forward. Keep moving forward. Don't settle. it says that when they went to Moab, they settled there. And that's just other translations say they lived there. That's where they. But the idea of that word settle, making choices that we know we shouldn't make, settling for people and culture and going places. You talked about getting rid of that environment and that atmosphere. Don't settle for what you know you should not go back to. Keep moving forward. Don't quit. Don't give up. Because that's what our culture says, our society says to quit and to give up. Keep moving forward and think in seasons. It's hard to do that, especially when we're in a tough time. We feel like this is never going to end. We feel like we're never going to get out of this. But so much of life is just seasons. We've had little kids for 7 years now. He just turned 7. We've had 3 boys, and it feels like this season is never going to end. It'll end soon, right? Right, Dad? It'll end soon. And now here I am. But it's hard to think that way. But think in seasons. Keep moving forward, even in the midst of that tough season. And I would say embrace your struggle. Because when you embrace your struggle, when you Sunday night conversation, the little things and the big things, when you meet it head on and you're not afraid of it, that's when God can do something through it. This author talks about delayed conflict is increased conflict. And so if I push this off, I'm not going to deal with this. I don't want to deal with that. I'm going to go get my oil changed in my car. I'm going to push it off. One day, that conflict is going to be increased, and it's going to be worse than it was if I just got my oil changed when the light came on, right? And that's what happens in relationships is we push things off. We avoid. So I made that joke. So avoiding doesn't help. No, it never helps. It helps in that moment, but it delays the conflict that will get worse. And so embrace your struggle. Go after that. Meet that head on. And sometimes that is with godly community. Sometimes that is with a counselor. Sometimes that is with your spouse. But go after it because James tells us, chapter 1, verse 2 through 4 says, "Consider it a great joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you experience various trials, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its full effect, so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing." I would love to be mature and complete, lacking nothing. Am I mature and complete, lacking nothing? Did my wife ask you? No, she said, no. But what produces that is going through hard times, allowing God to work on our hearts, to humble us, to grow us, to stretch us. And if we will do that with open hands, as you guys talked about, to say, okay, I'm willing to let you call me out on my stuff, because we're on the same team. You want to see me get better, just like in sports team. They want to see each other. You want to see your teammate get better. You want to win the finals. Yeah, I want to see Steph Curry win it again. But they've got to be mutually submitting to one another, mutually growing one another up. And if we will do that, it will make us mature and complete, lacking nothing. That's what the Holy Spirit can do with us. That's what happens when we come to our spouse, we come to our parents, our friends, whoever, our family, our community. When we come to the altar, we come to Jesus and say, I've got nothing left. God, I need your help in this. That's what he wants to do. And so we're going to sing a few more songs. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Natalie and Victoria to come up. And this song is a new song. This next one we're going to sing. It's called "The Story I'll Tell." And it's a journey of looking back and seeing what you've done, God, and remembering, but also just making this statement of belief to say the story I'll tell is one that's going to be different because of God, because he's involved. And so wherever you're at today with your family, your marriage, you're single, whatever journey you're in, I want to encourage you today that God is not done with your story. Keep moving forward and don't settle. And so I'm going to invite you to stay seated to take this song in, but I also want to invite you to respond. And so if you're sitting there today and you're like, hey, you know what? My car's not blown up. My relationship isn't blown up on the side of the road. We might need to put some gas in the tank, though. We might need to have a conversation. Come down front and pray with your spouse. Come down front and pray with your friend, with your family, with your parents. We have communion over here. You can take communion if you need to kind of write this prayer down to God and leave that at the table here. The Outlaws and the Hobbs are down here. They said they would be willing to pray and talk with anybody who wants to come down. I'm down here. My dad, Pastor Ken's down here. coming down front and responding is not a a shameful thing. This is a to be celebrated thing because God is moving and stirring in our hearts. And so, man, we want to invite you to respond today how God is leading you to respond. And so if you want to come down front to be alone, if you want to come down front to have prayer, we'd encourage you to do that. But I would like to say, like, this day, May 8th, Mother's Day, is it May 8th, right? 2022, can be a day that you mark on your calendar to say, this is the story I'll tell about my family, but maybe it's just about you. As Mr. Tommy talked about, he had to fix himself because his marriage was gone. So the only thing he had was him. The only thing he had was his choices, who he was. And so today, you can mark that down in your calendar and say, this is the day that I quit everything else. I know the circumstances are around me. I know the culture of society is telling me to do this, but the choices that I'm going to make today with Jesus, the power of the Holy Spirit leading and guiding me, today I walk out different. Today I'm leaving that stuff behind. And so let's worship, let's respond, and let's sing.